hopeful and positive talk, and a way of talking back to those who say Indonesia is broken. And as a political scientist, I've been studying elections and democracy in Indonesia for 15 years now, and written on many of the themes that you touched upon, on money politics, on democratic backsliding, the freezing of civic space. So sharing many of the concerns that motivated your talk, I was very happy to hear, to have put all these topics on the agenda. So before we're going to open it up and talk, let you all also ask questions, I'll have a few questions so we can touch upon some of the elements of your talk. One is the most recent expression of concern of the youth with democracy in Indonesia, at the moment when they were not complacent Democrats, but in now 2 months ago in August, they came out on the street and were, you might say, ringing the alarm, as you say, about democracy. It started out smallish, and then there was the killing of Han Kuniawan, and the protest got a scale, I must say, that surprised me, the amount of cities that were touched by violence also. I'm curious to ask you, how do you interpret these protests and the aftermath? Is this was this students ringing the alarm and calling for strengthening democracy, or is this democracy in peril, and the fact that it seemed like nothing happened much afterwards, that the support for democracy, expression of support for democracy declining because of these student protests?
Yeah, thank you, Professor Ward. I think the August, I would rather call it as incident rather than a truly a political move that is organized in a way. So economic pressures that has been experienced by regular Indonesians across Indonesia, it has created a feeling of unhappiness, dissatisfaction toward government. And the new government was 10 months on duty by then. And I think by then we did not see a real change happening from the economic point of view. And then we are also witnessing the passing of law in the DPR that has minimum deliberations, minimum public participations, including the passing of the law on the military roles in civil servants. Now, that has created dissatisfaction, discontent among student leaders. Now, when they marched and protested in August, it was also doubled by the DPR that has not been functioning our house for almost a year. We have not seen significant debate in the house. The house has been quiet. So you have economic challenges, you have law that is passed with minimum deliberations, and then you have the house that act in ways that undermine disrespectful to the general public. So it creates an outrage. However, it was not something that we can call it as a movement like in '98, in which you have a clear agenda that has been discussed for years and years before '98. This was more like dissatisfaction toward the situation. That's why when Afan was killed that evening, it sparked the anger everywhere. Now, still unclear until today who provoke into violence and riots. Okay? But in our experience, that's nothing new. It happens all the time. When I was a student activist in the 90s, the way the military stopped demonstrations is then, not today, then, is by creating chaos, creating riots, because we, the student, will then retreat. Because we don't want to be part of those who produce riots. You retreat because of there is a violence. So the way I saw it, when there was violence, this is a very effective way to stop the demonstration, because immediately those who come out with real agenda retreated, and then that's what happened. However, having said that they have retreated, I think the issue has not been solved. The economic condition is not improving. The DPR has not made any significant progress, and then there is a demand called 17.8. Yeah, 17.8, 17, almost very minimum, almost none is seriously addressed. So the problem is still there, and I think it's a matter of time it will re-emerge again.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I think that this movement brought the agenda, or these 70 plus 8 points, formulated it, but it has not, these points have not really been addressed. And one reason perhaps why it has not been addressed is that this feeling of discontent could not find a connection with the DPR, as you mentioned, and the parliament that has been, and here I bring in another political science terms, you might say cartelized. That a large majority of parties and parliamentarians have become associated with the government, and in that way not taking its role as an opposition. And I would want, if these are student protests with an agenda, you would want some opposition forces in parliament take on this agenda and express it, and then be the spokesperson of that agenda inside parliament. So this is a recurring theme of Indonesian democracy also, that people say, why is opposition, if it's there, it's outside parliament, and how come parliament becomes cartelized, as you say, as everybody just jumps onto the government and wants to join, and say, even if you would have won elections, perhaps all these parties would suddenly be in your coalition, and it would be Kim plus plus, but not a coalition. So the question would be, why has it been difficult to have a real opposition within parliament, and what could be done about that?
In the past we had situations where newly elected president were facing strong oppositions in the House.
Sure.
In 2004, when SBY was elected, he was a minority in the House, and he had to face strong oppositions. And then over time, he was able to secure support in the House. When Jokowi won the 2014 election, also he was a minority. And Gerindra, Golkar, was on the other side. And they control the House. This time, the situation has shifted. And I think part of the factor that contributed to that is because the previous president, Pak Jokowi, was very much involved in the election process. Yes. So I'm witnessing that when I was there. But the intervention was clear. So continuity was the message. Therefore, it was not like a new form of government. It was a continuity. So those who supported President Jokowi, two parties out, Nasdem and PKB, supported Anies. Okay? But and then, after the election over, they're back to the column. Okay? Yeah. So this is rather different. Despite the fact that Ibu Megawati was in power as president, she did not interfere in election. Free and fair election. And we must pay appreciation and tribute to Ibu Megawati for not intervening election, and it was free and fair elections. 2014, President SBY was in office. He ran the election. He did not intervene in the election, and let whoever wins. So, when election is over, then you have a new balance, and often the balance is, on the executive side, you control the agency, but on the legislative side, the opposition also have strong voice. But this time is absence. Yeah. And I think the absency has something to do with the nominations of candidates and role of the previous administrations in the elections, and the impact is what we pay now. Now, it is unique that you have a house where 80% of the members belong to the coalitions of the president. There is one party who is outside, but not clearly opposition either. And there you go, we have the civil society that take over that role. So this is troubling, I would say. But from our perspective, I don't see this as the end of the story. Sometimes in our democratic consolidations, we make 2 steps forward, 1 step backward, 3 steps forward, 2 steps backward, and that's sort of the process. So I think we are now, 1 step backward. However, civil society, labor unions, student activists, some portions of the media were still actively pushing for more transparency, pushing more rooms for criticism that should have been taken by the House, but since the House is silent, so they substitute that role.
So a nice moment in your talk was when you talked about how people look up to older generations of politicians and no longer to the current generation. And so it made me think of studies of politics right now, and the current theme in that, which I think is an explanation for that difference, and that is the role of money.
Yes.
That Shahir and Hatta, they could be elected on their persona and their ideas, and they didn't need to make deals or correct big budgets or do elections. And if I would summarize a lot of my research and my book Democracy for Sale in one sentence, it would be that it's very difficult to be the kind of integrity politician that you spoke about and win elections. That to win elections currently, you need to be willing to hand out money. It's sad, but if I put it honestly on the table, that particularly for local elections, that's what it is. And that's why my question would be about reform. Now there is talk about an undang-undang pemilu and reform about elections, but when I'm following these discussions, in my view, it's too much about let's not have elections, what a hassle, but rather about how could we keep democratic accountability, can we keep reward and punish bad politicians, but reduce the cost of elections, and in particularly reduce this rule of vote buying and handing out money. What could be done to get some more structural reforms of democracy and elections on the table so that we keep the good things of democracy and reduce the bad things?
Yeah, it will take times, Professor Ward. It will take times. But I'm more optimistic actually on this. We have seen not yet pattern, but cases, not yet pattern, but cases where local champions with integrity, with good records, won local elections and able to defeat candidates that buy votes. The cases were there, but not yet pattern. So those are there. And then our own experience. When we had our campaign during the 2024 elections, we didn't hand out money. We don't have money. There's no money at all volunteer. And you know, we got 25%, 40 million. These are voters who are not paid, who dare to face threat and still vote. Myself and Ganjar. Ganjar also gets 16%. So there's 42% who are voting not based on transaction. Okay. A study done by Professor Fitz. Let me check the name. I'll get back. I haven't found the exact full name. Professor Fritz at the Faculty of Economics at the University of Indonesia. He has been doing study on irregularities of vote, and he was able to identify blocks of voters that vote based on money politics, and those who are not, were voting without money politics there. So yes, there is that issue, but also we have large portion as well, not majority yet. And it is our responsibility now to continue the campaign, the educations of not selling our vote. And we should pursue that process. On the other hand, we need to fix our underground economy, Professor Bart. Because one of the challenges of fixing money in politics, transactional politics, is by tackling the root cause. What is the root cause? Underground economy. Because money that is being used to buy vote is not coming from the upper ground economy, it's from underground economy. What underground economy? One, underground economy, illegal activities. Judi online, drugs, mining that is underreported. That's second issue. That's second issue. Illegal mining, that's one. And then two, unreported revenues. Mm-hmm. You may have a mining open pit mining, for example, and you are extracting, let's say, coal, 1 million tons, but you only reported 600,000. So unreported is the second issue. The third issue, which is little number, is unregistered activity and informal sectors, but those are small. The first two is big, and these are source of money politics. So we need to fix this. And what is that? That means transparency, better taxing system, so that we can capture. And unfortunately, Professor Watt, Indonesia now, I think, ranked second or third in the world for its portions of underground economy. Mm-hmm. For 25% of our economy is underground economy. And 25% out of 20,000 trillion rupiah, that's a big number. And if we address that, it will be much more difficult to finance all of this. Because financing this need money that is not in our banking system. Otherwise, it will be easier to track. So I'm optimistic, but it'll take time. I don't think it can be fixed immediately, but I think we have now come to realizations that also in many communities that you may buy vote, you may sell your vote, and this is what happened to the policy in your area. Especially the local elections have been a meaningful education for the public on the result of vote buying and policies in that community.
Thank you for that. I have many more things to ask, but let's go to the audience.
Just asking Bart, if you want to briefly respond to that before we...
Well, I think a very brief one is the governance issue that you raised, which is about this underground economy, that indeed interested economic actors make donations to politicians, because then the politicians will pressurize bureaucrats to allow certain things to happen. And that's where actually Indonesia was making progress. They had adopted an Undang-Undang ASN, a civil service law that would make civil servants more independent of political pressures and more capable of implementing policies as written, rather than these kind of like naughty playing with the regulation. But this has been reversed, and I was just visiting last year the Komisi ASN, which has been closed down, and much of the efforts to make civil servants independent have been reversed, because politicians like, of course, to tell bureaucrats what to do, because they can do the things that Anis mentioned. So I would, as part of this integrity effort, I think fighting for the reformasi reforms and putting that back on would be an important challenge.
Absolutely.
Agree.
Thank you both so much for this very interesting addition to the lecture. I'm sure there are many questions in the audience. Let's start with two.
Everyone, hello Anis, my name is Jefferson. I'm a new PhD student in University. And actually, I want to highlight about the intellectual power, as you mentioned. You gave an illustration how the intellectual aspect and also integrity combined to become an ultimate power. And I will see today that the intellectual aspect has its power in our country, especially when I see people with person with logical fallacy, or maybe someone who has his or her graduate certificate question to our country. And the thing that I want to ask you is how to reinvent the power of intellectual power to gain its own power. So because in my view, today's intellectual aspect has no power at all.
Yeah. Well, like Pak Anis said, it used to be Shakir and Hatta who were really intellectuals, of course, who were the heroes. Pak Anis, do you want to?
If I may suggest, can we take a few and then respond?
Yeah, there.
Thank you so much for I'm Alif, master graduate from Erasmus University Rotterdam, majoring in governance and digital policy. Yes, but my question is that we are seeing now many policies set by the parliament and also the government. In our view, because many competent people sitting in the government and parliament, because on the election day, they hold greater capital. They have more money. So the more money they have, the more chance for them to win. What I'm trying to say is that we cannot touch the elites, but we can do something to the people, to the governors. So that this is my question for you. How do you see the voters on election day? And are they an object for us to educate so they can know better about the candidates which are better and how robust, understanding of the politics? Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. I'll take one from this side. Here's one. And on the back, I see a very young face, maybe? I don't know. Yeah.
Hello, guys. My name is Darius.
Siapa?
I'm along with my twin brother. Sorry, can you hear me?
Your name?
Darius. D-A-N-S. So I came here along with my twin brother. We both were studying in the University of Canada. And actually, this is not our first time meeting. It's back in 2013. We met during the 70th birthdays of Uncle Perwata's father.
Can you speak slower?
I'm sorry.
So I can catch.
Yeah. So this is actually not our first time meeting. It's back in we meet each other during the 70th birthdays of Uncle Perwata's daughter. Yeah, he's around. Because at the time, a lot of my friends were also 20 years old. And ever since then, we've been following your political career very closely. And even though at that time, like you weren't one of my options to vote in the presidential elections, but after that has changed until
we saw your political debate, your presidential debate. And that was one question regarding Jakarta's position, and in which you word your answer with the phrase, "Angin tidak pernah KTP." And even though that might seem like a very simple parable for me to interpret, but afterwards I saw in a lot of social media that there's a lot of people who actually misinterpreted it or actually make jokes on it. And that left me with a question. Okay, maybe some part of them, they might be like biased towards interpreting that question. Or second hand, maybe they're just a buzzer. Or third, maybe they just have a different level of education compared to those who have actually interpreted. And my question is actually, do you think democracy should only be reserved to those nations with equal access to education?
So the question is whether social media should be reserved?
Oh, no, sorry, that's democracy. Should only be reserved for those nations with equal access to education.
Do those nations exist?
I don't understand the question.
The question was whether democracy should be reserved for nations with equal access to education.
Oh.
Since when we're talking about democracy,
Let's keep time for others.
Yes. So if we're talking about democracy here, like every people have equal power of voting, right? For example, you, PhD title holder, and for example, with my grandparents who don't even have a ijazah SMP, but they have the same equal power of voting. Like, do you think it should be right or no?
Thank you. So because we have very little time, so Ami, do you want to take more questions and then just make a general kind of response?
Yeah, let me just respond first. So, number one is Jefferson says about bringing back intellectual power. So I would also say that we need to have more rooms for technocracy in the policy making of Indonesia. And of course, political aspect is important, but technocracy is important. And for political parties, I think we need to bring ideology to the front. I think in the past 2-3 decades, we have not seen clear ideology from political parties. What ideology they stand for, what are missions, so that today we cannot distinguish clearly within political party. These have become simply vehicle to get into authority, not so much political party with ideas. And if you look back in the past, we have contending political parties that clearly have different ideological lines. And when you have different ideological lines, you provide sort of stimulations for intellectual thinking to emerge. Because then you have to argue. Let's say, when the Socialistic Party was there, they argue why this has to go through this approach. And when the nationalists were talking about using nationalism, then they have to translate that into thinking. So having ideology stated clearly will stimulate rooms for debate, for conversation, and that's where rooms for intellectual can grow. Without that, it'll be very tough. So on government side, provide rooms for technocracy. On the political party side, give clear ideology so that you have debate clearly on issues. Okay, that's one. Alif, in our DPR, large number of our members, the member of the House, were involved in vote buying. And I think large portion of that contributed to open list system, where competing within the party. If we go back, I think the tendency now to go back to closed list, that the list of the candidates have been decided and you vote for the party, not for the individuals. I think it will then give less incentive for candidates to buy votes. because what is happening, candidates for the House, they're competing within the party and competing with other political parties. And that is where the challenge is. And vote buying is not only happening between the voters with the candidates, but also the candidates with the election committee. And the election committee is well known at the national leadership level. You know who they are, the 7 individuals. But when it comes to the grassroots, nobody knows who they are. And we didn't know their qualifications. We didn't know their track records. And that is where vote buyings were happening. So if we go back to the closed list, we may reduce that issues. Okay? And then I understand your issue. I think I was told that there was a discussion also happening here. I think would like to get the record so I can learn as well. Thank you, Pa. And then on the last one, then it's on democracy only for those with education. If there is not enough education, let's not get involved in democracy. Well, preparedness to participate in a democratic process is not simply a function of the degree that you have. It's not only a function of the level of education you have. If I may say, Indonesians were educated on elections during the New Order period. We were trained by the New Order to run elections 6 times. We knew the result before the election took place. Okay? But you know, there is no less than 900,000 polling stations, and the election must be done in 5 hours, simultaneously, across the country. Very complex system. That was impressive. Look at new democracy in the Middle East after the Arab Spring. It collapsed. Look at Eastern Europe. Look at Latin America. The population was not prepared for an electoral process. So when authoritarian regime fall down, the population held first election and chaotic. Look, Indonesia held first elections in 1999. Only a few months of preparations. But the entire populations, the organizers were prepared, and the organizers were civil society. The voters were prepared because we were educated to go to the polling station and vote. And after you vote, you go back home and watch for TV, right? And you'll see the result. This was an education process. It has nothing to do with degree. Has nothing to do with level of education. But this is called a political education. It was done under the New Order. The credit goes to them. Now, we were trained to do the electoral process, but we were not trained to conduct quality voting. That is not yet. Okay? So when we have free elections, now we need to go beyond that by being selective, being rational, vote according to your preference. That is something that we need to educate. So, and this is a process. If the New Order, educated the entire population with 6 times elections, this will also need a few times of elections to get us produce quality votes, quality result of elections. But do not underestimate the ability of Indonesians in undergoing this electoral process. Yes, we need to learn more, we need to produce better result. But let's remember, the process of growing for a human being is very different than the process of growing in a society. Let's not use our human age for societal growth. It will take time. But stay the course. Be optimistic. We'll get there.
Hello, I'm Almira. I'm the head of BPI Amsterdam. And also I'm a UCA student, an UB student. So my question is, as you mentioned, there might be vote buying, etc., and we might predict who will win first in the election process even before it already announced. So we're, as a Gen Z, the future leaders, of course. So in your opinion, what are the qualities or inner qualities, capacity, or mindset that Gen Z should have to develop and move from the passive acceptance to active renewal of democracy. Thank you.
There's one that you can throw.
So the microphone is that big?
Because you can throw it.
Selamat sore, terima kasih atas kesempatan yang diberikan kepada saya. Perkenalkan, nama saya Abdul Aziz. Saya koresponden tetap dari surat kabar online yang berbasis di Surabaya, kempalan.com, yang saya reside atau tinggal di Amsterdam ini untuk meliput seluruh wilayah Eropa dan Schengen. Saya cukup mengikuti perkembangan Bapak Anies sejak kuliah di MU, di Maryland University, dan pada waktu itu di Amerika saya juga kuliah di Georgetown University dan George Washington University. Saya ambil MBA, kemudian Pak Anies melanjutkan ke PhD. Kemudian dari Amerika saya berkarir keliling ke dua. Oke, pertanyaan saya Pak Anies, apa yang disampaikan oleh Pak Anies ini sangat bagus sekali. Saya sebagai aktivis politik di Indonesia dan juga saat ini saya juga forum diaspora Indonesia dan juga aktivis dari relawan yang mendukung Bapak Anies pada pemilu 2024 yang lalu. Reflection on power and integrity from Indonesia, in my perspective, it's gonna be complete or gonna be perfect if Mr. Anies could propose, hopefully Mr. Anies Baswedan will be our next president. Our main problem in Indonesia, frankly speaking, is moral. The corruption is terrible, and all the business activities and politicians are very bad. So the main problem coming from the religious sector, people doesn't scared of God.
Because we have a lot of questions.
Yeah, this is my question. So is it possible if maybe we can fix about the religious, about the ethical, and about the morality in Indonesia in order to become Indonesian better in the future? Thank you.
Hello. My name is Shawai. I'm a university student in Cuba, undergraduate. I know I look old, but I'm still 20. So I'm going to repeat it. Darren Ademolu, in Why Nations Fail, says nations don't fail because the people are lazy, but because institutions become extractive, controlled by elites for their own benefits. In Indonesia, we call it Korea. And looking at Indonesia today, with money politics, selective law enforcement, and local capture, it feels like the doors of democracy have been locked from inside. Even when people protest, their voices cannot be heard from inside the building. So my question is, Mr. Anies, how can young people push for truly inclusive institutions without falling into populism or apathy? And as international students, how can we be the plutonium in this atomic bomb, helping reopen those doors of democracy for the people? That's it. Thank you.
Plutonium, the atomic bomb. I think that was viral a few weeks ago. How many questions did we have? Three? One more?
Can you ask the name again? I forgot the
What was your name again?
Shawai.
Shawai. Ini semuanya. Sorry, the lady in the pink, just because of the color of your
Oh ya, nanti aja, jangan nyalain sekarang.
Hello, Pak Anies. Thank you so much for your opportunity. My name is Deborah, and I'm a master's student in political science in Leiden University. Thank you so much for your very interesting insight on democracy, which is a very important issue. And here my question is, with the very cartelized political parties in Indonesia, I think one of the solution that we can have is to have challenger parties. Just straightforward, how does your take on this? Do you ever think to build a political parties that could really challenge the established parties that that we are have right now, because I think we cannot rely with the current political parties in Indonesia. As Bapak already said, there are no ideology, there are no program, and only benefits for the elites. So do you think to manage and build your own political parties in the future, because we only have 4 years left to the next upcoming election, and yeah, you already need to do education politics since right now. Thank you so much.
I think a lot of people in the audience are waiting for some revelation here. This is supposed to be an academic event, actually. Do you want to respond first to these questions?
So, if I may respond, I mean, in general, with democracy and the youth, you've been saying why nation failed, and then you're talking about what should we do as the young people. I think I said it earlier that it's important for the young generations to ask tough questions. Who gets what in every policy that is made? Where is our part in the policy that government is making? And I think that are part of the roles that you can do. And be active, be truly active. For example, if you question some policies, don't let it go unchallenged. If government decided to build a fast-track train between Jakarta and Bandung, and it is financed by taxpayers across Indonesia, but the benefit only being felt by the people of these two cities, would people like you're from Sumatera Utara, from Medan, would you not be asking questions? Why should our tax money go there? Why should we do it? So I think it is very important for you to speak up. And if you let it go unchallenged, they will continue doing this. So speak up and speak up. And once you're done, go back to Indonesia. Go back to Indonesia and continue. His grandfather was the governor of North Sumatra. So continue your grandfather's role, being part in politics. Be there and active, okay? So
without
that's
money.
Yeah. And then questions on Pak Abdul Aziz, what next? And also you're also talking about what next? Tunggu aba-aba. How do I say tunggu aba-aba?
Wait for the signal.
Wait for signals. But yeah, of course, that is one of the things that we've been contemplating. We've been contemplating. We have not come to conclusion yet, but I agree with you. There is a need for new and fresh. However, it has to be done differently. I think we pick up a lot of lessons from our campaign in the past, that volunteerism was the key word. Everything done through volunteerism. And we were not satisfied with the result. Not because of our achievement, but we are not satisfied because the way the election was run. The election was run with a lot of state intervention through law enforcement, as well as through government programs of subsidy here and there. I think it has colored the process and it has shifted the result. We challenge that to the court, but from our perspective, we also learn that there are champions in our society who are willing to be part of this process, working with volunteerism, spending their resources for a mission, for a purpose. And I think we have seen those individuals. Now they're part of our network, so we will come to gathering and we'll decide where to go. And if it is a go, I think you should come back and involve. So I think I've addressed all of that.
Yes.
I was putting this on TV because
wondering about this.
But this has nothing to do with our discussion, Pak. But this has anything to do with climate, with environmental problems. But I think I'd like you to see these pictures, to get you idea how our city in Jakarta is having pollution problem, air quality problem.
This is air quality.
Air quality problem. Before you start, this is a real picture, satellite pictures of air quality in Java and Sumatra by hour. So every hour the satellite is taking pictures, and they collected the data over months, the years, to get the profile of air quality in Java. The darker is the dirtier. The lighter means clean. So you can start now. You will see Jakarta often become the most polluted city, not because of within Jakarta, but because of the chimneys in the coal power plant generated by coal. So if you see that, it is very scary. When the winds blows to Jakarta, Jakarta will be very polluted. But when the winds goes to Sumatra, it's Sumatra that is polluted. The problem is why when Jakarta gets the dirty air, the alarm goes on, because we put air quality detector. In other area, they don't have the detector. Because they don't have a detector, so it says as if it's clean, but it is not. So you see that it's very scary picture. And this is by hour. This is why I said the air doesn't have, the wind doesn't have KTP. Because it keep moving. Depending on the wind blows, then the air quality of Jakarta, and not only Jakarta, of entire city. So we need to fix this.
Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Nora, and
No, your name again? Nora.
And I'm studying at Terima. My question is basically a source from everyone else's question here. It's just, so what does the role of social media play into some sort of intellectual power we need to cultivate? And does it deteriorate, or does it actually, grow more discussions among us?
Thank you. Hello, Panis. My name is Angga. I am IT programmer at ING Bank here in Amsterdam. I have a question. I got an impression about your talk that the old generation actually destroys democracy, and then the youth are like the democracy. But actually, if I see the past days, I'm almost in my 30s, and then some of my friends actually sort of like climb up the ladder to be like politics as well. Then I kind of see that they're not that that vanilla as well. As in like they won't break things. As in if you see the people, the youth that came on 98 demonstration, probably they also have that burning passion that they see only the old generations are like ruining our country, and then we want to fix it. But yeah, if you see where are they now, probably they have changed as well. My question is, what makes you have like that optimism in you that the young generations won't do the same as the old generation?
Like angkatan 98 and now where are they now? Yeah.
Hello, Anis. Hello, I'm Marto. My English is not good, so I will.
Bahasa Indonesia boleh.
My English is chaotic, so
Bahasa Indonesia aja.
Ya, terima kasih. Sejujurnya bahasa Indonesia saya juga kacau. Oke, ini menarik sekali karena saya datang sini untuk dua orang. Satu kawan lama, satu kawan lama juga. Khususnya khususnya temanya tentang demokrasi. Oke, ada pertanyaan, saya dulu sangat berharap sebenarnya dengan Anies, karena ada harapan baru tentang demokrasi. Tapi ketika ada koalisi kolaborasi dengan Rizik Sihab, yang budgetnya sangat melebihi saya, kasarnya, dan track record kekerasannya melebihi Polri, utama lah. Itu menjadi pertanyaan saya, bagaimana mencakupinya keberanian berbicara soal demokrasi di sini, apalagi dengan track record si Rizik Sihab yang membaikat diri terhadap isu yang sangat demokrasi. Terima kasih. Wartawan.
Thank you.
Bagus pertanyaan.
Let's one more question from this side then. And, sorry, maybe?
My name is Faris. I'm the neighbor down under, down in Australia, Belgium. I'm a recent graduate from Calgary in international politics. Now, one of my questions is that regarding democracy in the region, because currently there is an appeal towards authoritarianism, just like how we see the success of China or whatever they show to us, but also the US authoritarianism in the United States. However, it is appealing in China because it is successful, but it is also a reminder to us because whatever is going on in the United States under Trump is a reminder for us if authoritarianism is fallen to idiocracy, you would say. Now, my question is that I think the United States, as an international politics student, is that it is the growing of a class, what we would deem as neo-feudalism, and of course there's on the billionaire class that are super rich. However, for Indonesia, how can we ensure that political parties is not the new noble class fighting for an elected monarchy? There is an ever-growing stronger executive. Sorry?
Say that again?
Sorry. How can we ensure that political parties is not the new feudal class that is fighting in an elected monarchy in an ever-growing stronger executive role that is the president? How can we ensure that the political parties does not groom or raise younger or newer generation in parallel to us that is more elitist, that is shaping the role where should the government go to serve this small collective class of strong politicians and not people because they have barred us from politics because it is very, very expensive to play, as of you have told us and your personal experience. And this also is my second short question. What is your opinion on the government as the one who give and decide the budget for election and borrowing any money from external sources that is not the government, and the media have a government mandate policy on how long and who they should show, how long they should promote candidates, basically obligated showing of every candidate without those candidates must pay the media to show them.
No. I think we can first ask Panis to respond.
Yeah.
Because we need to wrap up after this, unfortunately.
Now let me hold on a minute, if I may. Nora, with regard to role of social media, the social media has been instrumental in bringing up issues that is overlooked. So we have seen policy implementations, policy executions that is not as planned, and social media was instrumental in bringing that up into attention. Any wrongdoings, we have seen that. The challenge in our social media today is how can, and also on top of that, social media has been instrumental in fighting against fear. the challenge today, I think, how social media can create and strengthen trust. And that is still absent. What we have is we are no longer fearful to talk about wrongdoing. But how can social media create trust? And I think that is still a big homework for us. So in Indonesia, same thing. We have seen no viral, no justice slogans. That when you see injustice and you bring it up through social media, and then attention is given. And unfortunately, or fortunately, the mainstream media is now shopping issues in the social media instead of in the real observations in day-to-day life. They're also shopping for news in the social media. So social media has become a marketplace, a free marketplace for a lot of issues to be raised. So on that aspect, it is good for democracy. But on the other hand, it is also in the social media where we have seen post-truth is happening, where many things were, many informations were created in ways that doesn't reflect reality. Hoax is, going through all the time. That's why it is important for those who are active in social media to have critical thinking, because critical thinking is our shield against that. So that's one. Now, Angga, you raise a very interesting point that we have youth activists actively campaigning for democracy, and then they join a political party, and then they practice what they stand against.
Become pragmatic.
They were very pragmatic. Yeah, and perhaps go further. Being pragmatic is one thing, but being opportunistic is another thing. I think it can go from idealistic into pragmatic and opportunistic. I think some have gone through that. And but we are also seeing those who stay the course. And what differentiates them? In my observation, those who continue to engage with communities of critics, community in the civil society, continue to engage, they stay the course. And that's why often our message to anyone, including myself, when I joined government in office, one of the things that has to continue being open is engagement with the civil society, because that would help us when you enter government to stay the course. Because otherwise, you can easily trap into the culture of pragmatism and further opportunism. So, but that doesn't mean that we need to stop fighting for democracy for the youth. Just because some have deviated. I think it's our moral obligations to continue supplying new generations to help improving our system. Pak Mato, if I may answer your question in Bahasa Indonesia, because so hopefully easier to understand too. Begitu bertugas di Jakarta, saya bertugas di Jakarta, saat pemilu kita tidak bisa mengatur siapa mendukung dan siapa tidak mendukung. Saat pemilu kita bisa dukung siapa saja. Nilailah ketika bertugas. Apakah saat bertugas menjalankan konstitusi, menjalankan prinsip demokrasi, menjalankan prinsip kesetaraan selama bertugas. Disitulah dinilai. Karena itu saya sering sampaikan ketika selesai pilkada 2017, pilkadanya sangat divisif. Sesudah itu saya hanya berdoa pada Tuhan, berikan umur panjang sehingga saya bisa menyelesaikan 5 tahun. Supaya apa? 5 tahun itu jadi rekam jejak. di mana bisa dinilai bukan oleh hoax, bukan oleh mesin pembuat kebohongan di sosial media, tapi oleh rekam jejak. Apakah seluruh warga di Jakarta mendapatkan kesetaraan di dalam pelayanan, di dalam perlindungan, di dalam kebebasan, di dalam merayakan kebinekaan dan merayakan persatuan selama 5 tahun. Dan saya bersyukur selama itu rekam jejaknya melindungi semua. Bahkan tema-tema sensitif yang tidak bisa diselesaikan. Apa itu mas sensitif? Izin rumah ibadah. Nggak bisa selesaikan. Justru pada periode itulah banyak yang terselesaikan. Jadi, saya ingin sampaikan, dalam pemilu kita tidak bisa mengontrol siapa mendukung, siapa tidak. Tapi nilailah ketika mulai bertugas. Pada saat itulah seseorang akan dilihat apakah dia bekerja mengikuti konstitusi atau dia bekerja mengikuti siapa yang memilih ketika pemilu berlangsung. Begitu jawabannya. Terima kasih. Now, Faris, you raise a very interesting point, Faris. That is a pill of authoritarianism. I've often responded to these questions, this question in Indonesia, because some of our bureaucrats, some of people in authority in Indonesia often echoing a message that maybe we don't need democracy, maybe we need an authoritarian regime, and referring to China as an example. So my response is, why not referring to North Korea? That's also an authoritarian regime. Why not referring to Myanmar? That's also an authoritarian regime. So why should we be, cherry picking when showing an example? I think why China excel, not simply because of authoritarianism, because there is meritocracy there. There is a meritocracy allows those with excellence to actually, play roles. And without that, an authoritarian regime will not function. Same thing, democracy without meritocracy will also fail to function. And that's also what we are experiencing. So I think on that, we need to go a little bit further. Not simply it is about authoritarian regime, but it is about what's in it that makes a country like China excel. And one of them is meritocracy. And that's what we need. There's an absence of meritocracy in Indonesia today, in the public sector and sometimes also in the private sectors. Organizations that values meritocracy in the private sector, they have proven to be sustainable over time. If I may names, Astra Group, to give you example. Meritocracy is truly there. Good governance is truly there. That kind of organizations continue to grow over time. They're not operating based on licensing from government, based on meritocratic value. And this kind of organizations now is being copied to others. But we are not seeing similar things in our public service or public or government. I am grateful to see that Ministry of Foreign Affairs have been practicing selection in a meritocratic way for new entrants of diplomats. We have seen sons, daughters of the first echelon, even former ministers, were rejected to become diplomats. And for that, that is a good news. Not because he or she is rejected, but the fact that your son or daughter of somebody and not easily get accepted. And that's what we need. So we need more of that in our system, meritocracy. Yes, I agree, there is a danger of new feudalisms in our political party. Why? In the past, we have seen turnover of leadership in a political party. Nowadays, we have not seen that turnover as it should be. And then in 2015, the Constitutional Court turned over our law on preventing brothers, sisters, and direct families to run after someone in that family is in office. So if I'm a governor, after I finish 2 terms, my brothers, my wife, or my in-law is not allowed to run again. That law was overturned in 2015. And that creates a situation where after I do my 2nd term, my wife becomes the 3rd term. And then after my wife do the 2nd term, my son is the 5th term. And that law was there. In 2015, it was revised. It was unfortunate. And unfortunately, the president at that time decided not to challenge that. He could have challenged it, brought it to the DPR and overturned that. Because that is key to prevent our democracy from becoming feudalistic. I think what's unique about Indonesia compared to our neighbor, when our founding fathers established this republic, is equality. That you don't have to be someone to be a governor. You don't have to be children of a privileged family to be a bupati or mayor. And the structure was created equally. Equality was there. And I think there is that deterioration on that principles. Hopefully, all of us who care about that will continue to fight for bringing back equality and meritocracy into our system. Thank you.
Because the initiatives are there. Before we close up, I want to actually ask Bart if you have some final comments or reflections based on the Q&A also and Patrick's responses.
Well, I think one of the nice things of interaction like this is also to see you challenge and express your norms and values that you bring in politics. And I hope that if you do take up some of the suggestions we had, that you will indeed not go to the road of the pragmatism and beyond, but that you keep up also some of the values and norms that you expressed here about integrity and meritocracy. And I think that's what Indonesia needs, and that is reinventing democracy, if we can really realize that. But it's, as you say, it's a step-by-step struggle into the future.
Yeah, and also if I may share some of the reflection on that, it is way more difficult to work together among those with good intention. Orang baik lebih sulit bekerja sama. Why? Because orang baik demand to agree 100% each other.
Yeah.
Okay? You and I have to agree 100% in order to maintain our togetherness. I may disagree with you 5%, and I may stay away from you.
Yeah. So they become more difficult collaboration.
The orang tidak baik, they only have to agree 20%, and they still work together. Okay? And that is the issue. You may see differences, maybe the differences is small, but and then immediately you break out. Immediately, I'm no longer with you. Done. Why? Because of 5% differences. And that is my reflections on this end of war. It is so difficult for good people to continue working together because we often demand that we have to be the same 100%. And we have to agree on all issues. If there is an issue that we disagree, immediately say, okay, I'm done with you. And that is my reflection on this journey. I think it's very important to stay the course. Otherwise, we depart in a journey with 1,000 people, good intention individuals. After 2-3 years, we end up only with 300. Why? Because of disagreement on micro issue, and then people stay away. So in my reflection, it's very important for us to have a clear missions and then able to accept the fact that there is no way we will always agree on everything.
That is also not the essence of democracy.
Exactly.
Completely 100% agreement. But in order to be able to build democracy collaboratively, as a co-creation, we need to accept, small differences as long as the principles are
yes.
similar in that sense for democracy. I think, Pak Anies, you wanted to say something about Aksi Bersama also, or?
Yeah. If I may, we formed an organization called Aksi Bersama, and that we're working on building bridges in the remote areas of Indonesia. So we are doing this work. Why bridge? Why apa namanya ya? Jembatan gantung itu apa bahasa Inggrisnya? Not hanging bridge.
Hanging bridge.
We built, jembatan gantung. So it was 2 months after I served as governor in Jakarta that there's a community in Srengseng Sawah, south side of Jakarta, asked me to come because the bridge over there was already no longer functional, and it was very dangerous. They call this bridge as Indiana Jones Bridge because it looks like an Indiana Jones bridge. So I came there with the head of the Public Works Department, and then we're going to fix this. I asked the head of the department how much it costs to fix this bridge, and he said 400 million rupiah. And your budget is 3 trillion rupiah. Okay? So 400 million is nothing compared to the budget of 3 trillions. Okay, so let's do it. And he said, we cannot do it. Why we cannot do it? Because this is Jakarta and over there is West Java. And Jakarta government cannot build bridge in the land outside Jakarta. And then the river belongs to the Ministry of Public Works, Kementerian PUPR, and we cannot build anything on that river. Okay? And you know what happened? In Indonesia, almost borders between village is a river. Border between kecamatan is a river. Between kabupaten is a river. And what happened is there is no small bridges on that area because the responsibility is on the higher level of government. This village cannot build that because the money is only for this village, not for that village. It's very administrative.
Same reason why in Amsterdam we have so little bridges across the water there. Many
it's also because of that.
Ego-sectoral and problems, yeah.
Perhaps Aksi Bersama can come here too.
You can do that.
And do that. So we decided to actually build that. Instead of asking government to do it, they have allocated zero money. It's clear if you look at the budget in the National Public Works, Jembatan Gantung is zero, none. So we decided to go out there and build that. So we are now doing that in many areas. So we ask your support for this project, and you can go online and see this. But the idea is when a bridge is built, it is not only connecting between two river banks, it's connecting between backwardness and brighter future. Connecting between those who have no access to economic prosperity into better access to economic prosperity. We have seen so many pregnant mother pass away nearing the birth of its baby because when they have medical complications in the village, they were not able to transport her to the medical facility simply because they cannot cross the river. And having that bridge solved their problems. I had a very touching experience when I visited Pandeglang. We built this picture was in Pandeglang before and after. When we had the opening ceremony for this bridge, there is a young lady came to me and said, and she was crying, "Pak Anies, you should have come a few years ago if you come a few years ago, build the bridge, my mother would have been still alive, because her mother passed away having a complication nearing birth and unable to be treated because they could not transport her to a medical facility, which is not too far. So this project, in every bridge we built, around 20,000 euro for every bridge. And we're very transparent on this. So if you care, do support, and we'll be grateful, and we'll report to you everything that is used from the money that you donated for this project. Thank you.